thank you very much, President Clinton, for being here today. We're honored to have you at Borders. We're here today to talk to you about your new book, Giving, How Each of Us Can Change the World. Thanks for being with us today.
Glad to do it.
You know, there's so much to talk about in this book, but one of the first things you notice when you open the pages is this wonderful picture of this baby right here. And I'd love for you to tell us that story. It was important enough for you, obviously, to put even before the title of your book. Who is that baby?
That baby was a Cambodian orphan. His mother died shortly after he was born from AIDS. He was born with both AIDS and tuberculosis. And he was taken to an orphanage near Angkor Wat, which is supported by two American brothers, the Stamos brothers from New York and San Francisco, and their foundation. And they're our partners. And I agreed to provide the children's AIDS medicine to Cambodia, beginning with this facility and one down in Phnom Penh, the capital. So I saw 320 kids, including this beautiful baby, who were on our medication. And you can see what a beautiful baby that is, and already returning to full health. The child is just about a year old now, not more than a year old now, and it's just healthy and strong. And I wanted to put that picture in there because once you read the story of the child and you realize that he was headed for certain death, and he was saved by medicine that cost $60 a year. I think it's worth $60 to save a life, and I wanted to illustrate through his glowing, luminous eyes that all of us can give money or time and make a difference in people's lives.
Well, it's a striking photograph, and I think it tells that story really wonderfully. Inside this book, there's a lot of stories about some well-known people who've devoted their lives to philanthropy and to volunteerism. People like Bill and Melinda Gates, people like Warren Buffett, even Dr. Paul Farmer, who's a doctor working really hard out in the world to make things better. But the majority of this book is really about some of those smaller grassroots organizations that are out there. So while those people set the tone to some degree, it's these new, smaller organizations that are sprouting up that really take up a good deal of this book. Was that one of your objectives?
Yes, I did that because what I wanted was to make sure that anyone who read this book, of any age, from any income group, with any amount of available time or specific skill or particular interest, could find something in it with which they could identify. So with giving money, there's a chapter on giving money. I start big with Gates and Buffett, and then I go small down to kids using lemonade stands to raise money for Katrina, or children giving pennies to help kids in very poor schools in other countries. That's what I try to do, so that where I wanted in every chapter, every reader to be able to find something with which they could identify. I also think it's important to illustrate the larger point that in America there are now about 1,010,000 charitable organizations or non-governmental organizations, NGO in the parlance of the world I live in now. Half of them were started in this decade. That's a stunning statistic, and it shows you what's going on and what we can do.
So with that number, that explosion, and you talk about it and document in the book, what's behind this explosion? Where's it coming from? I mean, what is it that changed in American society?
Well, I think a lot of things have happened. And first of all, as there always is when the economic paradigm of a country, or in this case, the whole world, changes, and we shifted to an information technology society where people as consumers and investors have given mobile money relative power. So we changed the economic paradigm. The downside is it's put enormous pressure on the middle class in our country and in many other countries. Very difficult for us to maintain a solid middle class dream in America. That requires politics. That's why there's a chapter on government. The upside is you've created all this new wealth among people, many of whom are quite young, and they don't want to wait till they die to give it away. They want to give it away while they're alive to some charitable purpose, but they want to know the money will be well spent. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the advent of internet giving has given people of modest means the chance, if they all care about the same thing at the same time, to swamp the giving of Gates and Buffett, if they all join together to give what they can. The third thing I would say is the rise of the non-governmental organizations, both as a conduit and service delivery tool in our country and for partners in poor developing countries. So, and the reason that's important is that gives people who invest their time or money or skills or give things the confidence that it won't be a wasted gift. It won't be an empty gesture. There really will be a very high probability that you get a big return on your investment.
And that's the concept of the microcredit, which you talk about here, which
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people completely understand.
Well, essentially, microcredit involves giving loans, sometimes quite small loans, $25, $50, to people in countries with a per capita income usually of under $2 a day and quite often of under $1 a day. So the people who are there very often have never drawn a paycheck, don't have a balance sheet, don't have a systems of assets and liabilities, don't have a credit rating. So they have to be loaned to based on their skills and reputation for honesty in the community. But we know now that microcredit programs that are well managed have a repayment rate in excess of 98%, even in the poorest countries. And that once you give enough loans, they can have an impact not only in their own community, but throughout the country. So there are all these microcredit ways of giving now. Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh won the Nobel Peace Prize last year for 32 years of operation of the Grameen Bank.
Right.
There are other huge microcredit lenders in South Asia where it really took hold first. There are big microcredit units around the world. When I was president, we gave about 2 million microcredit loans a year from the U.S. government. But now there's this organization, Kiva.org, which allows everybody to be a microcredit lender by collecting from its partner organizations throughout the world specific business people or farmers who need loans. And you can go on the Kiva website and you see a picture of the person,
Right.
often in the work setting, and you get a description of what they do and what they need the loan for.
It's unbelievably interactive. I mean,
Yeah,
to be able
so-
to follow along.
Unbelievable. So you can say, okay, I want to give this Cambodian farmer or this small business person in Kabul, Afghanistan, a loan. And you'll know how much they need. So let's say they need the farmer in Cambodia needs $100, but you can only give 50. They'll lock your 50 in. Then when two other people, let's say, give 25, they'll ship the money to a local partner, and they'll go find a farmer and give him the $100, and then they'll give you a regular progress report on the website. And when the farmer pays the loan back, you can either take your money back or turn around and reloan it. You can become a microcredit banker with a personal connection to someone halfway around the world for $25.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And it can, $25 sounds like nothing in America, but it can change a lot of lives in other countries.
You know, these are things you've learned as you've gone along, and you said in your book at one point that you didn't spend a lot of time thinking about giving, or no more than any ordinary person, and then you got involved in politics and that consumed you. But you said Hillary, on the other hand, your wife, has always been involved, and in fact was a role model of sorts for you when it comes to giving.
She always thought all this kind of work was important. I mean, 36 years ago when I met her, she was working in legal services in New Haven, trying to provide legal aid to poor people. She was always interested in politics, but she never thought she'd run for anything until shortly before she entered the Senate race in New York. So she worked on legal services. Then when we got married and moved to Arkansas, she set up a legal services clinic at the law school where we were teaching. And then she brought a preschool program to Arkansas from Israel, which is now in 26 American states, and I write about it in there. And she organized a lobbying group, an advocacy group for families and children in Arkansas, helped to build a tertiary care nursery at the Children's Hospital, and volunteered to oversee the school standards reform in our state. She was always doing stuff like that. She served on all these American Bar Associations committee, including one on the status of women, designed to help women break through the glass ceiling, which I think is appropriate since she's now trying to break the biggest glass ceiling of them all.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But, that was her life, and she loved that work. when she got out of law school, her first job was with Marion Wright Edelman at the Children's Defense Fund. So I saw through her how much difference you can make. But when I was young and starting out in politics, it required so much time and attention. I didn't really begin to appreciate how work in government and work in the giving world, the private world, could reinforce and complement each other until I became president. Because all these countries were becoming democracies, the former communist countries, lots of other countries around the world in poor areas. They were having to grapple with economic and religious and political conflicts. And they hoped to build civil society, things we take for granted. I mean, a lot of this giving work is the United Way, the Red Cross, the volunteer fire department. Sure. A lot of these things are older than our republic, volunteer fire departments. Benjamin Franklin organized the first volunteer fire department 40 years before the Declaration of Independence. But in a new country or a fragile democracy, having what is called civil society, all these volunteer groups that can keep the politics honest and deliver services whether the government has the capacity to raise and spend the money right or not, they're vital. Mm-hmm. And I saw that. So I really knew by my second term that I wanted to do work like this when I got out. It's taken some twists and turns that I didn't expect. And I just thought it would be interesting to share my perspective with people throughout America and the world who are interested in this, to try to see if I could generate more givers.
Well, you're doing that, and my last question for you is that you're not the only one. There is a movement out there. You've talked about the explosion. Do you think that the concept of giving, of volunteerism, could become an imprint of this generation, the generation that that's happening right now?
I hope so. I was, when I started the AmeriCorps program, I wanted to create an ethic of service and giving in the young people of this country, but over 500,000 young people have served. And it's caught on. It's Time Magazine's editor recently recommended that we make it universal, that we give every newborn baby a savings account of $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever it was, and it'll grow into $19,000 by the time that person becomes 18, and then if they will give a year of service to the country in the military or in civilian life, then they get the $19,000 to go to college.
Right.
That is the sort of thing I'd like to see done. I think we need to create this ethic of service, and this generation of young people has gotten a bum rap. I mean, they're the first generation that consistently does more community work than the 1960s generation did. This is the most, they sometimes don't like politics, and I hate that. They are too cynical about politics, and I disagree with them. But you got to give it to this generation of young people. They are the biggest volunteers of time and funds, thanks to the internet, of any generations in American history.
That's a hopeful note.
Hopeful.
Well, I thank you very much. We're so pleased to have you here today.
You.
I thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. To have you.
Day to day, where do you want to be?
I wanted to be first. I got here at 2:10, and Mr. North Dakota beat me.
Got a chance to put things right. So how's it going? Lay down your arms down, curtains behind that serene.
I got up at 3:30 to catch a train to come down here.
We wanted to get it autographed. It's a big historical moment, his potential first husband.
I really like the fact that it was so much human interest stories versus just dry reading materials. I like his stories about other people and what they've done.
And if we can just follow his example, President Clinton, we'd probably be in good shape.
My mother and father really love him, and I'm going to dedicate this book for them.
I thought, there's 43 presidents ever. When am I ever going to get to see one up this close? So I thought it'd be well worth it.
I noticed a number of the organizations in the back, the organizations I've given to in the past, and it's just kind of re-energizing me to get back into the giving.